town, so let me ask you. Of course, you're not in town. You're back in your jurisdiction. Is the mandate a tax or a penalty?
It's a tax, and when you understand that the Solicitor General of the Obama administration argued for it to be considered a tax, when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in their ruling 5-4 says that the only way that this health care individual mandate can stand and be seen as constitutional is as a tax, then it is as such. And I think that we have to make the simple common sense evaluation that now individual sovereignty in the United States of America is threatened because the federal government and the Congress has now been granted an unlimited taxing authority to be able to mandate to the American people certain type of actions or behaviors, and the consequence thereof, being a financial consequence, is a tax which is going to be monitored and ruled by the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service.
Now, it's sort of interesting, though, all the Republicans I've heard in the last 2 or 3 days have agreed with you, with the exception of one, that it is a tax. And the one who disagrees through a representative is Governor Romney. Governor Romney says it is not a tax. He says it's an unconstitutional penalty, but he says it's not a tax. Can you give Governor Romney some sort of advice, because he's going to have to navigate some rather perilous waters if his own party disagrees with him?
Well, I think Governor Romney needs to understand that this is now a unconstitutional penalty, maybe in the case if they had ruled as far as the Commerce Clause. But when you start to understand the ruling that came down from the Supreme Court, and actually the precedent that it now establishes, whereby the federal government can, as I said, mandate a certain type of behavior or mandate a certain type of action, and they can actually tax you for for your inactions. And I think that's the incredible thing that we must all understand. So the Solicitor General argued for it to be a tax. The Supreme Court said it is a tax, and I believe President Obama has been misleading and actually probably lying to the American people when he was there in front of George Stephanopoulos, and he was asked if it was a tax. He said absolutely not. Because of the fact that you are required to make a financial restitution to the United States federal government through the IRS, that is nothing more than a tax.
Well, how does he rev up the Republican base, the Republicans who don't like the tax? I'm not talking about the politicians, but the voters. How does he rev them up about that whole tax outrage within your party if he says essentially, look, you know, I actually agree with President Obama, it's not a tax?
Well, I think that the governor probably needs to look at who he has within his circle of advisors and probably get them to provide the right type of counsel and advice. And probably the governor should take the opportunity to go down and do as I did today. I had a roundtable with about 10 doctors up in Port St. Lucie who are orthopedic specialists, and they clearly said this is how we see this, and this is how we understand the ramifications of the Affordable Care Act on our business, as well as on the medical industry and the medical practitioners that are out here. So I think that we have to get down on the ground and talk to the individual Americans. And also, Greta, you have to understand what seems so ironic. That 236 years ago, right about this time, Thomas Jefferson was sitting down and writing the Declaration of Independence. And he talked about the unalienable rights of the individual that come not from man or government, it comes from a creator. And when he lists those grievances against King George III, one of those grievances was the imposition of taxes without their consent. And this is exactly where we are 236 years later.
All right, now to another aspect of this decision. You and others, a number of senators and members of the House, have written the 50 governors telling them not to implement the Obamacare, including the exchanges. Why did you write that, and what do you think is going to be the effect?
Well, I haven't written anything, but I think if you understand the Affordable Care Act, the governors have till 2014. And so I believe that they have within their rights, as we understand federalism and understand the enumerated powers of the federal government, they have the ability to govern, and especially under the 10th Amendment, so they have to do what is best for their states. And this fight is not over. As a matter of fact, next week, we're going to bring it back to the House floor to give the Democrats and those who originally implemented this against the American people and against their will an opportunity to say that we stand with the American people, and we don't want to see the largest tax increase, which will affect middle-class families as well, on the American people if this actually does continue to go through and be fully implemented starting in January 2013 out to 2018.
All right, on June 28th, with my colleague Neil Cavuto, you made a reference to Speaker Pelosi, and I'm curious if you want to do-over as to one word. You said, I think the former Speaker Pelosi is somewhat delusional, and it was in response to the Supreme Court decision. Want to do-over on the term delusional?
No, I don't have a do-over. I think that when we look at former Speaker Pelosi, here was the person that said we have to pass this bill in order to find out what is in it. And we continue to consistently understand the more we find out, such as the nationalizing of college education loans, the 18 to 20 taxes, the real estate transaction tax, tanning tax, all of these things. It's nothing more than a tax law. It's nothing that is going to do anything for health care in the United States of America. And so I will continue to stand by the comment that I said based upon some of the responses that she was making and the struggling that you saw her this past Sunday to try to change